We are all responsible. Hi, I'm Holly Schroeder. I'm a UX researcher from St. Louis, Missouri. I work in health tech. I have long brown hair, dark brown eyes, olive skin, and I'm disabled. Disabled isn't a dirty word. It's part of the bits and pieces that make up who I am. Being disabled is just one part of who I am, but much like someone's culture, it's so much a part of my experience that I can't really separate it out. I don't need or want anyone to be sorry about my disabilities, although I do appreciate expressions and acts of empathy when times are tough, and sometimes they are. However, what really helps the most is when people make a conscious decision to be an ally, promote accessibility, using their talents to put it into action, and encouraging others to make it a standard, to make it the standard. As a worker in tech, the lack of equity and access is overwhelming at times. In the US, many states lack the infrastructure necessary to provide equity and access to broadband or high-speed internet. There's inequity of access across income groups, pricing, digital proficiency, and much more. The highest concentration of individuals impacted are clustered primarily in the southern states and in low-income rural areas. Two categories in particular bubbled to the top when the pandemic hit regarding the digital divide. First, healthcare. 11 states lag behind in providing essential services like telehealth for mental health consultations. It's pretty important in a time like this. Next is education. 1 in 5 students enrolled in online school reported that they weren't able to complete their homework sometimes because of an unstable internet connection. In my home state, in the neighboring state of Kansas, where we share a school district, this infographic displays the staggering statistic that 70% of children in Kansas City did not have internet access at home. So we already have a pretty big battle on our hands in terms of equity. Then, in addition to that, disabled people have more challenges. We have the disability divide, as if there wasn't already enough of a hurdle. We have vast chasms of inaccessible spaces that are not just unwelcoming, but unusable for people with all sorts of disabilities. WebAIM, an accessibility nonprofit, did an audit of 1 million home pages. They conducted it in early 2021 and found that 97.4 of web home pages had accessibility issues. 6 primary categories floated to the top. These errors, if addressed, even just the top 3 items, with just a few keystrokes, we can make huge leaps forward in terms of access for people with disabilities. Imagine if we allowed the same lack of ability in physical space. What if only 2.6% of tall buildings had elevators for disabled people? I think given the benefit of elevators to all people visiting tall buildings, there'd be public outrage. What if we went even a step further and not only removed the elevators, but when designing new structures, we didn't plan for them at all? It seems a little ridiculous, doesn't it? But does it also sound a little familiar? Let me give you an example. There's a popular drop-in all audio chat app that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Maybe you hang out there. For anyone who's hard of hearing or deaf, like me, I'm hard of hearing, I wear hearing aids. Exclusion is automatic. All audio means no lip reading, and puzzling on whether I heard boat or goat or note It's just too exhausting. I need captions. For someone who's deaf, it's a total non-starter. No captions, no participation. The company's gotten heat from the disability community and activists, but nothing's changed. By design, it's not accessible, and it's certainly not the only example. So how many people exactly are disabled? Am I asking you to put a lot of effort in for a bunch of fringe cases? I'll let the numbers speak for themselves. 37.5 million Americans 18 and older report difficulty hearing, and that comes straight from the National Institute of Health. I hope you're starting to notice that disabled people aren't fringe cases. Deaf and hard of hearing is just one kind of disability. That's 15% of Americans. So what about worldwide? How many disabled people are there? Globally, about 1 billion. In the US alone, it's 41 million people. I'm one of them. I have numerous disabilities, most of which are not immediately visible. Is this the case for many disabled people? The world of disability is as varied as the people in it. People who have disabilities have them for all kinds of different reasons. Some people are born with a disability. Some people may become disabled because of an illness, disease, an accident, or as the natural course of aging. You have things like auditory disabilities, cognitive, learning, neurological, physical, speech, visual. So a lot of different ways that disability can impact someone's experience and their experience in digital space. Being disabled creates barriers that most people don't consider or even think about when pondering disability. For example, people with disabilities often struggle to get access to education, have poorer health outcomes, lower rates of employment, and are more likely to live in poverty. That's pretty gloomy. So you've already got that weighing on your shoulders. And then you've got the digital divide and then the digital accessibility divide. And what exactly is the impact of these inaccessible spaces? Digital accessibility is part of the long list of challenges disabled people encounter daily. Worldwide, we've grown dependent on the digital world to handle some of the most basic transactions that we do from day to day. Banking, shopping. In some ways, it's increased our freedom of power and choice, but that's not true for everyone. One example is the job application process. This has become a devastating obstacle for some disabled people. Online applications have become the standard for recruitment, and 90% of those sites don't meet even the lowest requirement, single A for accessibility. That's a complete full stop. It's not even not getting an opportunity to interview. There's no way to apply for the job. For me, I have disabilities in more than one category, which is common for many people who are disabled. I have a degenerative brain disease called essential tremor, which can interfere greatly with my ability to perform simple tasks like using a mouse. So that makes things like completing CAPTCHA puzzles, hitting touch targets, really frustrating at times, and it makes keyboard-only navigation essential some days. I have neurological disorders that affect my short-term memory, make me sensitive to movement, visual clutter, and pattern. And in addition to issues with language processing, I have central hearing loss. Some days it feels like a lot, and it is a lot. I'm fortunate. I've got pretty good coping strategies and a great support network, but some days are really hard. More than once, I've been unable to do a simple task like log into an account to pay a bill. Just scheduling paying a bill. I end up locked out because of password masking, Or I go to a website and motion's not controlled by the user, auto plays the default, and I end up sick. Online meetings lack live transcript or closed captioning. Those are just a few of the examples of how lack of accessibility can exclude disabled people and impact someone's personal experience. Our dependency as a society and the lack of accessibility for disabled people has escalated to a human rights issue. And before you're like, whoa, Holly, it's taken a little far, let me talk to you about the COVID vaccines. In January 2021, that nonprofit I was telling you about, WebAM, checked COVID vaccine sites from all 50 states and the District of Columbia. There was 94 web pages in total, included things like general vaccine information, lists of vaccine providers, and registration forms. Blind people across the United States reported that they were unable to access even basic information to find out where they could go to get a vaccine, how to register for a vaccine, or to actually register for a vaccine. They could not complete the task by themselves and had to have the assistance of another person. And so maybe you're thinking, well, why can't they just call? Well, call centers have long wait times, limited operating hours, and that information may be housed within the completely inaccessible website. Additionally, blind people are particularly vulnerable to contracting COVID because they often can't physically distance themselves from others without help. If you're blind, you can't see other people to know that you're about to encounter someone who isn't wearing a mask and looks sick, or just someone who's not wearing a mask. It truly is a human rights issue. So that brings me to my next point and what I started with. We're all responsible. And as people working in tech, we have an extra responsibility to be mindful and advocate for accessibility. We are uniquely positioned to have a real impact on the work being done, whether you're someone who designs screens, experiences, or the code that runs it all. Nobody gets a pass. We have a collective responsibility to keep a light shining on accessibility from inception to launch to ensure that disabled users are included every step of the way, whether you have an accessibility specialist or an accessibility team. We need all hands on deck. Accessibility is about more than just checklists. You're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. Checklists are great to make sure you're in compliance with governing bodies, but it requires a little more effort than that and some personal reflection. So take some time, pause and ask yourself if your team or company is doing what they can to include disabled users in the products and services that you're designing. What are you personally doing? Be honest with yourself. Do you use ableist language? Do you even know what that means? If you don't, Google can help. Do you have biases against people with certain types of disabilities? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I encourage you to grow and learn more with an open heart and mind. And plan for growth. Plan to grow personally and professionally. At the beginning of the year, I look ahead and consider my personal and professional goals. Among them, I include learning and networking objectives that support my desire to continue my education around accessibility and increase my understanding of how various disabilities impact users. Even though I myself have disabilities, that doesn't mean I know everything about all disabilities that exist, or even all the scenarios that could exist for someone who has my particular type of disability. Every individual is different, and I'm not being a very good ally if I'm not seeking out that information. And if you don't know how to be an ally, learn how. And it's about more than just thinking accessibility is a nice idea. It's a combination of self-education, a commitment to diversify the media you consume, the literature you consume, amplifying the rich tapestry of disabled voices, hiring and promoting disabled people. Those are just a few examples. When you're at work or anywhere else, if you see that disabled people aren't being included or worse, excluded, with the excuse that accessibility is going to be considered later, say something. Might be a little uncomfortable at first, but like most things with practice, it becomes second nature. You might be the only one for a little while, but in my experience, the more that we shine light on this, the more people feel empowered to say something. And it won't be long that you're the only one. You will start to create that community of allies. Advocate for your disabled colleagues and make sure your workplace is a psychologically safe space where they know they have allies to support them. That is everything to someone who is disabled. Knowing that you can say something and that it's okay, that it's not going to be ignored or disregarded, that you're going to be supported. That's a really big deal. Go exploring. If you're here today, you know your way around the internet. Set aside some time. In fact, book it on your calendar. Block it out. Learn about some of the disabilities that exist. There's a lot to choose from. Many are unseen, and find out how that can affect the experience of various users. Get familiar with the current guidance from the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and other websites like WebAIM. There's podcasts, webinars, meetups, autobiographical videos and blogs. Blogs to teach you how to apply and understand the documentation around accessibility. User stories about how disabilities impact the lives of disabled people. All tons and tons of information and people available who are willing to share that information if you just take the time to look. Plan to be inclusive. Watch for the bystander effect. It's really easy to assume someone else has it handled, especially if you have a specialist or a team. But keep in mind that it's really easy to talk about it. It takes more effort to make sure that it gets carried out. So take the time to make sure that plans are being made and follow through, and that they get followed through with. I've put up some simple examples of how you can be exclusive. Co-design and test with disabled people. Ask disabled people for their input. Include them on your team. And be curious. Ask disabled people questions. Although, a word about consent, please. Whether it's public or private, always ask for consent first. Sometimes we're simply too exhausted to be the teacher that day. That does not mean you should give up. Do not take it personally. Try again. Most people are happy to help, but also do what you can do, and don't expect disabled folks to do the work that you can do for yourself. Show respect to individuals. If someone tells you something's offensive, don't fight or argue. It's dehumanizing. Just because one person isn't bothered by a phrase or term doesn't mean that someone else might not be. Lastly, think about how you can contribute and how you can do better, starting right now. Thank you all for taking your time to attend today. Special thanks to the Braille Institute for their free font, which was featured throughout this presentation. You can visit their website to download their free accessible font and learn more about what makes fonts accessible. You can visit them at the Braille Institute, brailleinstitute.org/free font. And that's it. I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.